This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Who's got it better than us?
Nobody.
You got a date with justice.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of the Justice Report. This is the 10th edition, coming after a stunning defeat versus Ohio State. Brandon met his deadline, got his articles off. I can't wait to read them at landof10.com. Brandon, what is going on, sir? How do you react to a game like that? One that had everybody on the edge of their seats, start to finish, man. What a football game.
Yeah, hey, what's up, Doc? Thanks for making this work how we did. I know logistics are always tough with me being a ways from where the studio is, so I appreciate it. So had some time to breathe, to think about the game and whatnot. It's been about, I think, an hour and a half removed from the ending now. It like you said, it was a great football game. It was a showcase of how good this sport can be, how good this conference can be, how good of a coach Urban Meyer can be, how good of a coach Jim Harbaugh can be. It was truly a test of two powers, and when I walk away from this game, it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, I still don't think there's two teams in the country better than either of these teams. I don't think Michigan's going to go to the playoffs, but I definitely think that with their play and with both of their losses coming by a combined 5 points, that they deserve to be in the playoff. I don't think they're going to end up in there just because of how things worked out, and dominoes aren't going to fall in their direction, but what I can take away from this game was it delivered. I mean, it gave us all that we wanted as football fans, back and forth, a team that controlled for the majority of the game with Michigan, then Ohio State pushing there in the end, showing some heart. The kicker, who had struggled, comes in and makes that big field goal at the end of the game there. And then in overtime, all the momentum swings in Ohio State's direction. Michigan's on the goal line, fourth down, almost always in college football. That play gets batted away or picked off or sacked, especially on the road. Wilton Speights hadn't made those kind of passes in the second half at all, the ones that he needed to execute on. He makes that one, it goes to Harbaughs, and the game gets extended. And then, of course, the controversial ending to the game is that people thought the game was over. Ohio State looked short. They give them the first down. The next play they score. So it's exactly what we wanted from a football standpoint as far as the game goes. Obviously the officiating, I haven't seen a game officiated that bad in a long time here in the NCAA. So I think the NCAA referees outside of the targeting call, they're really not that bad. They're much better than the NFL referees. But as far as this game goes, there were about 4 questionable calls. 3 of them that were blatant. Jim Harbaugh ranted after. But I'm just excited to, kind of not break this game down. It's kind of too soon for that, but at least to talk about it. It was a very interesting but a fantastic showcase of football.
Brandon, do you think that the game resulted, didn't go in Michigan's favor, but do you think that the game was lost because of the officiating? There's a lot of other things you can point to, including the 3 turnovers that were very costly, 2 by Wilton Speights, 2 interceptions, as well as, the fumble that cost Michigan points. Where do you assign most of the blame for this loss?
As far as most of the blame goes, there was points in the game where Michigan could have buried it. And I think that's been the narrative for their 2 losses. There were situations where Michigan could have buried the game. They could have ended the game. They could have, put the casket, put the dagger in the coffin and walked home, undefeated, honestly, because they could have done the same against Iowa in the other loss. But, speaking on this game, this is a game against Ohio State. This isn't a game against Iowa. This is a team that, every yard counts and that you should beat by 1 to 5, 1 to 7 points. It's going to be a 1-possession game, no matter who the winner is. But in a game like this, I'm not going to sit here and say it's on the officiating. Obviously, Speights should have executed. The running game should have opened up. The run blocking should have been better. There should have been better play calls in that second half as well. But the reality is, Michigan made the play to end the game. They stopped Ohio State on that 4th down. He was short. It's pretty. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's the worst call ever, but it's bad. It's bad. It was a bad call. He was short with the ball. And I feel like rules just get made up as we go sometimes. I think this is another instance. It was clear that the ball was short of not only the unofficial line, but the line in general. He was far away from that yellow line. It wasn't even close. It was about 3/4 of a yard away from that yellow line when he fell down. I believe it was Mike Weber, could have been Noah Brown. But regardless, he was short, and it looked like he was short, and the game doesn't fall in officiating. There needs to be better execution by Michigan's entire offense there in the second half, but the defense did their job, and Michigan had that game. This isn't a game that's decided on one play in the end, towards the middle of the fourth quarter. This is a game that was decided on the final play. a play where Michigan stopped them, a game where it wasn't one of those things where you can look back in hindsight like, oh, if they would have done that, they would have won. This was a game where you're like, okay, they did it. That would have been the final whistle. That would have been the game. And that's how I look at it. I mean, should Michigan have, did they line up sluggish on that last play where, Curtis Samuels ran it right in? Absolutely. I think 100%. They weren't ready for that. They were shooken by that play call they thought ended the game. And they were shaken up, and then they came in there and they let a screen on the left side go right in and end the game. And they had been shrinking the field all game, and they let Ohio State spread it on that play. So that, I'm not going to sit here and blame the officiating, but on that final play, yes, that was a deciding factor. I'd say that game should have ended right there.
Now, a lot of people are commenting regarding Jim Harbaugh's post-game, kind of comments. He's bitterly disappointed by the refs, felt like that wasn't a first down. Do you think that his comments post-game were in bad taste, or do you kind of give him a pass because it's too soon after a rivalry game, a game in which he just lost, and I know a game that he really desperately wanted? You could tell both coaches were fired up.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Jim Harbaugh is Jim Harbaugh. He's going to do some ill-advised things. He's going to say some ill-advised things. He's going to do some things that sometimes aren't irrational, or that aren't rational, and sometimes things that are rational. And I think this season, for the better part, besides the depth chart, I know people have issue with that, but besides that, he really hasn't done anything too crazy this season. There hasn't been anything that he's done where you're like, Jim, what are you doing there? You can't do that. This is an organization, the NCAA, representing it, yada yada. He hasn't really done anything like that. So he waited until the final game to really, let off in that post-game presser. Because after the Iowa game, with that questionable face mask at the end of the game, unlike McCray, where he clearly did get him and gave Iowa an extra 15 yards for that field goal that was eventually set up, he didn't really say much about it, just say he didn't agree with it, and that was kind of it, and moved on. But in this game, he really sounded off. And he made some great examples, and I would definitely wanted to bring it up in this because there were 3 calls that were terrible. I mean, there was the no call on Grant Perry, where he was absolutely wrapped on a critical third down. There was a call on another play. It was on Delano Hill for pass interference, and it clearly was not pass interference. There was that final play call, obviously, that hurt them. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Michigan had, I believe 8 or 9 penalties called on them for nearly 100 yards, and Ohio State had 1 called on them. It was because a player came out without a mouthpiece. So essentially, it was just a timeout taken away from them. So they didn't have any penalties, take away yardage. So it's a penalty-free game for Ohio State. There were 2 holes that they missed that were pretty blatant. But above all else, I mean, it's that final play. It's the 2 pass interference calls they missed. And that's what Jim Harbaugh's talking about. And he has a right to talk about it. When a team goes into Columbus and they're on the road, they already have enough adversity against them to have the rest turn on them and do the same. It's tough for them. And I've never been an endorser of, okay, this game was decided by the officiating. But this is as close as you get to being one of those games.
Let's rewind now to the beginning of the game. Were you surprised that Wilton Speights was able to come out and play that effective? It seemed like there was a little bit of gamesmanship throughout the week, even when the game started. I mean, you had Speights warming up kind of with his arm close to his shoulder, kind of indicating that he was hurt. I really feel like Jim Harbaugh did a real good job of protecting the precious information regarding whether Speights was going to start or not. Were you surprised that he actually was the quarterback that started the game? And do you think that Jim Harbaugh did a good job of limiting the information that came out regarding Wilton Speights?
We had heard about it. Probably, I think this was on about Monday or Tuesday, that Wilton Speights had a strong chance to play. Of course, we couldn't really report too much on it because it's so, nitty-gritty to be able to, wishy-washy to report stuff on injuries, especially in Michigan circle. But I think it was on Thursday when we got the confirmation that, Wilton Speights was going to be able to play this game on Saturday and expected to start. And then when he came out, I mean, anything can happen. Any setback can happen. So looking back 2 weeks ago, and I think that's the better way to look at it, you look after the Iowa game when it was reported that he broke his collarbone, and you figure, okay, John O'Korn's going to come in. He's not too bad of a backup. And then you see him after the Indiana game where he struggled a lot in the bad weather. And then you start to think to yourself, okay, well, now Michigan's in real trouble because it all lies at quarterback play, which is something they don't have. I think you see Wilton Speights able to recover, able to come back after, I believe it was a separate shoulder is what it's sounding like, or at least looking like. That's what you got to figure at this point. Maybe a deep bone bruise or something around that nature. But regardless, he went out there and he played the game. I mean, he was hurt. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You could tell he was hurt, but he took hits and he did what he had to do. He did everything he could do. Obviously, he turned the ball over a couple of times there. But for him to be injured in that kind of game, come in and almost take it over and win in Columbus, you gotta tip your hat to him. Wish him the best in the postseason, whether it is in the playoff or not. And of course, he seems like he's definitely going to keep that job going in next year as well.
So what do you think were the biggest factors? Was it the turnovers? Did Michigan look a little tired to you in the fourth quarter and overtime? What do you think were the biggest factors that led to this loss? I know it's one of those things where it's a little bit too soon after the game, but it kind of looked to me like Michigan started off strong. They had, really solid game plan in place, but it just looked like late in the fourth quarter going into overtime, it just looked like they were a little bit gassed. It didn't look like the same team in the later half of the game.
Well, the story of the two losses this season is that the offense just decides to go super conservative. The play calling gets very, I guess you could say, playing not to lose-esque rather than playing to win. And I said this, I think I tweeted it out, I might not have, but I know I said it out loud that early in the fourth quarter, I said, hey, Michigan has to play to win this game. And I believe at that point, Ohio State had only 10 points, maybe they had 17. I think they had 7 at that point, actually. I'm trying to remember. Either way, I said, Michigan they're not going to hold this Ohio State team much longer. This offense is going to find a seam. They're going to find a hole. They're going to go right through it and, blow this game open. Not blow it open, but, get right back in it. That's exactly what happened. The offense slowed down and they got conservative and, they were moving the ball. It wasn't as much as it wasn't like the Iowa game. But the throws that mattered, they weren't getting. The yards that mattered, they weren't getting. Davion Smith could break off. I think his largest run was maybe, in that second half, maybe 40 yards. But they weren't finding the holes that they needed. They weren't making the plays they needed to on third down. And there were too many, simple out routes on the outside of the field going for 4 yards on second down to set up 3rd and 6. Rather than just going for that first down or at least trying to get something going. And it wasn't happening. The play calling wasn't there. But as far as the biggest factors in this game, it's got to be Ohio State's, resiliency. There were so many times that they were knocked out of the game. So many times that defense, and I know that the subject of this game is probably how good Michigan's defense was against Ohio State's high-powered offense, but people start forgetting that Ohio State's defense had its back against the wall a bunch of times. I mean, I'm not just discussing the Wilton Speights fumble at the goal line. I'm talking about, the huge pick six from Malik Hooker, the interception for the linebacker for Ohio State. And you think back, Ohio State wins that game by 4 points, and 14 of their points came off turnovers on their own side of the field. So the difference in that game was Ohio State's defense. It's pretty simple. While it did allow some points, they made the plays that mattered. They made those 14 points. They created those 14 points because JT Barrett and an Ohio State offense couldn't drive the length of the field the entire game besides in the first drive of the game and then the last drive of the game. So, yeah, you could probably say that it comes down to that last drive of the game, but really Ohio State's defense was the difference maker. Otherwise, Michigan wins this game by 2 scores.
Now, the Buckeyes have won 5 straight and 12 of the last 13 in the rivalry. And somebody I noticed on your Twitter page at Land of Justice had tweeted out to you, hey, what's it going to take for this to become a real rivalry again? And you responded back simply with one word, everything. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what do you mean? What does Michigan need to do to kind of get back into this rivalry? Obviously, this was a solid chance for them to go into Columbus and do some things with Jabril Peppers, with the offensive talent, with Don Brown's defense. But why did you say everything needs to change in order for Michigan to kind of get back on the winning track versus their number one rival?
Well, they're playing against Ohio State like they're playing not to lose. They're not playing to win. And that's always been the mantra at Michigan football the past 15 years, honestly. It's been that they're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Once Michigan football gets that confidence back in these big games where they're able to run it down their throats to make take those big shots. What's the longest throw Michigan made all game? I mean, maybe it was because it had to do with Speights' left shoulder being a little bit hurt. That could have easily been a factor, but he looked fine. And I mean, it's probably playing it safe, but at the same time, maybe throw Shane Morris in there, put John O'Corn in there, throw a deep ball. They didn't throw a deep ball. I know Ohio State really didn't either, but Michigan didn't get that creative on offense. I mean, Pepper saw, maybe 2 to 3 snaps. And again, like we've seen all season, he just takes the ball and can't get anything out of it because he's never been a decoy. They don't know how to use him as a decoy. And they did it early on in the season to make him effective, but they hadn't since. That continued. Eddie McDoom hasn't been seen the past 3 games at all. And he's a guy that was getting some great jet sweeps and running for some key yardage in those games, and suddenly he's gone. I mean, there's some other things that factored in as well. We didn't see a lot of Chris Evans, only a few carries for him. When he was in, he got the good yards. He was getting good carries, but again, they focused on Davion Smith against a team that had a good interior defensive line that was, with Michigan's freshman guard, Ben Bredesen, and on the other side, you had Kyle Kalis, who's been struggling for the better part of the second half of the season. They were playing not to lose. The play calling was soft. It's been soft. And in order to change this rivalry, it's pretty simple. They have to win a game. And they have to win a game convincingly. I mean, they have to do what Ohio State did, not what Ohio State did to them for the past 15 years, but they just need a game where they control. And that was almost what happened today. I mean, there was a time in the third quarter where Wilton Speights, had the ball. They were up 17-7. They got the ball back, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, if they can drive the length of this field like they have done before in this game, go up 24-7, this game's over. Up 24-7, they could have ended the game and put the dagger in the coffin. I really don't think Ohio State could have come back from that. There's really no way they could have with the way that their offense is playing. So they need to learn how to bury a team. They need to know how to press the gas. They were the worst fourth quarter team I've seen out of a Michigan. They were a bad fourth quarter team. Again, we've seen some bad Michigan football teams, and this one was the best one I've seen probably since 2006, which is fitting because of what happened with Ohio State 2006 as well. But nonetheless, they need to beat an Ohio State team, and they need to beat them convincingly, or they need to be an underdog. What happened with Bo when that team in the game of the century in 1969 went in and beat a Ohio State team that was said to be invincible, and they beat them, and they beat them in the Big House. And they need one of those. Not to say that they need to be an underdog, where they need to be 6-4 or whatever it may be, and go in and beat a 10-0, 11-0 Ohio State team. They just need to be a team that can control Ohio State for the majority of the game. They need to beat them convincingly and convince people, hey, we're the real deal. Harbaugh's the real deal. But as of right now, Harbaugh's 0-2 against Meyer. And for the better part of that second half, it was outcoached by Meyer. But I think at this game, it was a game of inches, just even as it gets. It's probably the best football game I've ever watched. At 20 years old, I know you can't really invest too much into that, but I'll say that as much. I mean, double overtime, back and forth, not too much of sloppy football. The turnovers were pretty. The turnovers weren't too bad. I think the turnover in the end zone for the pick six was a great play by Raekwon McMillan to tip the ball. The linebacker interception was a great job of disguising that he wasn't in coverage and then going obviously into coverage. And then on the other side of the ball, I mean, the tip that went into Pepper's hands for that interception. So, I mean, besides obviously the fumble at the goal line was sloppy, but other than that, it really wasn't a sloppy game. It was good, classic Big Ten smash mouth football. A lot of people will immediately go to, oh, this is going to be the 10-year war again. I wouldn't go that far just yet. I want to see Michigan win a game before we can, say that. But there's definitely a certain feeling between these two teams again. I think the rivalry is close to coming back, but again, I still think Michigan has to get that big win over the Buckeyes to, again, call this the game and mean it.
Yeah, this loss has a lot of ramifications. Michigan sits right now at 10-2. They were 7-2 in the Big Ten. They kind of fall short of several of their goals. They're not going to be the Big Ten East title holders. They're not going to be in the Big Ten title game. They're probably not going to get to the college football playoff, barring some unforeseen situation where every team loses. So it looks like a season where there was a lot of expectations early on. Michigan played solidly, but in the end, losses to a couple teams that maybe they could have gotten victories over, but on the road versus Iowa, on the road versus Ohio State, they get two losses. So at this point in time, how would you characterize this 2016 season? I mean, it had a lot of potential. They fell short of some of their goals, but it seemed like renewed hope regarding the Michigan fan base. You got to see Jabril Peppers. You got to see another quarterback develop and get better. So there were a lot of positives to speak on, but it just is a little bit sad right now as we speak because a lot of their goals they fell short of.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of goals they fell short of. This was a team that had high expectations. They had a lot of seniors. It's a team that's being pretty much guaranteed to struggle next season. And I want to bring back some hindsight, some history of a team that was said to struggle this season because of how much they've lost. That's Ohio State, a team that was pretty much written off this year for how much they've lost and how much they were going to lose. Also, a lot of that came from Michigan fans, surprisingly. And you see now this Ohio State team, college football playoff bound without a doubt. Assuming Penn State beats Michigan State, Ohio State's probably going to stay at that 2 spot. Maybe Alabama struggles with Auburn. Don't think that's going to happen. But, regardless, Ohio State is a team that has a very similar situation to Michigan. They just missed the Rose Bowl due to a heartbreaking loss to Michigan State last year. They just missed the college football playoff, went to the Rose Bowl. I'll have to correct myself. They just missed the college football playoff, not the Rose Bowl, and then went in and had a chance to beat down Notre Dame in the postseason. And all of that was due to a heartbreaking loss to Michigan State that, decided their Big Ten East fate. Very similar feeling for this Michigan team, inches away from going into that college football playoff, into that Big Ten title game. and now they're going to lose all these seniors. They're probably going to lose Mason Cole and Jabril Peppers to the draft. And you're losing nearly your entire defense. You're losing the better part of your offense. But you return some good running backs. You return a really good receiving core. You lose Darbo and Cheston, but you're getting guys like Cole Crawford, Eddie McDoom, who have had some significant time. Grant Perry looked good today after not being used a lot because of his suspension on the defense. Guys like Rashawn Gary, Brian Monet, Lavert Hill and David Long have to make you excited, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a team that's kind of similar to that Ohio State team of last year. I'm not sure if they're going to do the same things that Ohio State did this year on that note, but nonetheless, I mean, this team didn't get to what they wanted, and a Jim Harbaugh team that was going to win the title in the first 3 years, it wasn't going to happen last year. I don't think it's going to happen next year. This was the team. So while everyone always said that it'll take Harbaugh, 3 or 4 seasons to get to that title, perhaps they're right, because that might come in that fourth year when he has those recruits and where he has his guys. Again, these were all with the guys from the team with the coach of Brady Hoke. These were all Brady Hoke's recruits, and he had to come in here and build relationships with them. Get them to trust him. He got to that point, and he was close to that title. He was close to that Big Ten title. But it's pretty simple. I mean, Michigan's not on Ohio State's level. He didn't invest a program that was on Ohio State's level. He invested a Michigan team with a lot of undeveloped talent, and he, I think, in my personal opinion, got them as close to their ceiling as you can get. I mean, with your only 2 losses coming by 1 point and 4 points and double overtime on the road, both on the road, I mean, I know that in the Michigan football language, losing to Ohio State means it's an unsuccessful season. Not going to the Big Ten title is an unsuccessful season. Not going to the playoff under Harbaugh is an unsuccessful season. But let's be real. We'll use some logic. They're 10-2 in what was football's best conference this season. Again, both losses being slim. It was a good season. It was a season where they dominated the teams they needed to dominate. And I think this program's in great hands. I think it's in a great direction, and I think that it's going to win a title in the next 3 years. I really do. But once Harbaugh has his guys here, and I think Kirk Herbstreit brought this up on game day, those are his guys. Those are the guys that he's confident can run that offense that he wants to run, that defense he wants to run. And they did a pretty good job this year. But I think the ceiling isn't there yet. This is a team that was close, but Harbaugh has high expectations as a coach, as a recruiter. And Michigan football has a high expectation as a program, and they're not near that ceiling just yet. I think in a couple of years, probably 2018, 2019, you'll see a team on the field that's going to be very good.
Now, you're a reporter for landof10.com, your first time covering the Michigan versus Ohio State rivalry matchup. Take us through, for those of us that aren't reporters and that are not working in the journalistic field, take us through this experience from the last couple of days till today. How do you watch the game? How excited were you? What kind of deadline did you have to meet in terms of your work at Land of 10? Take us through, what was it like this week for you in terms of reporting and covering the Michigan football team for Land of 10?
Well, I didn't get to go to the game because we had another person there. We had Rachel Lindsay there, and that's who took care of the game for us. So as far as today goes, I really didn't have much of a different experience than a casual fan. But during the week leading up to it, I mean, it was a lot of anticipation. The press conferences were interesting, a lot of questions, there was no guarantees. There was no bulletin board material really. But there was a lot of, fun. I mean, it was a team where, I got lucky in my first year covering this team that they were close to a national championship opportunity. They were at a national championship caliber. They were a team that was number 2 for a while there and was inches away, or an Alabama loss away, from being number 1 in the country for the first time in a long time. And, I was a part of that, and I thought that was really cool to be a part of this. Obviously, for me being 20, it's surreal as is, but, having that extra bonus of them being good this season, and as good as they were, it was a lot of fun to cover. But this week it was fun. It was interesting because, like I said, the press conferences, yada yada, all the hype, all the fans going nuts. All the Ohio State fans I mentioned, the Michigan fans I mentioned, yada yada. It was fun. I had a blast doing it. And then on game day today, I had to do a blog during where I just pretty much updated everything throughout the game. So just got to sit on the computer and on the couch. They call it a couch column. And then thereafter the game, write up a story. I wrote up one on Wilton Speights. You can find it on landof10.com/Michigan. And so I wrote a story on Speights, and being just short of some execution, which is kind of the story of his game, 2 losses. But yeah, that's pretty much what a week is like as a journalist covering the enigma of the Wolverines.
What are one or two things that you've learned along the way this year covering in Michigan?
To be careful with your words, to think before you speak, to think before you tweet, 100% those two things, because hot takes are sometimes too hot to touch. I think you need to stay away from those. And then another thing that I learned is just have fun with it. Don't get too stressed out. Don't get too sweaty over anything, because at the end of the day, we're journalists covering football, and that's a blessing. So.
You can follow Brandon at Land of Justice. You can see his work as well at landof10.com/Michigan. Definitely host of the Justice Report. It's been a great 10 first episodes. What's going to be upcoming in the next couple of weeks here and there on the Justice Report?
Oh, we're going to get a week off here from football, for Michigan football at least, because they're not going to be heading to the title game, obviously, so we won't see anything from that. So next week, probably give you a little preview over the projections of the bowls, what needs to happen for Michigan to possibly get back into the playoffs, should they. Obviously, we'll know more once those college football playoff rankings come out, and after that Michigan loss on the road at Iowa, not moving them at all, maybe they only drop a couple of spots, which would give them a fighting chance to get back in. And then, obviously, you have to look at the bowl projections. It looks like Michigan could match up with Western Michigan in the Cotton Bowl, which would be extremely fun to cover that, especially in this state, which could be PJ Fleck's last game, as it seems like he might be going to Purdue. But yeah, that's what's headed for the Justice Report. And then once we do figure out the bowl, obviously the week after that, start previewing that. A lot of recruiting stuff, because recruiting season is coming up, so it'll start getting hot.
Definitely. Check out our work, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Check out Brandon's work on Twitter and at landof10.com. Brandon, thank you so much, and no worries at all. Hey, that's what the best part about podcasting is, hey, you tell me a time, we fire it up, and we can record. And you provided a great insights the first 10 weeks, and now I can't wait for the next set of podcasts from you and from your Twitter page is very awesome. A good follow at Land of Justice. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks a lot, Doc. I appreciate it.
We'll see everybody next week.
Who's got it better than us?